Stuart, welcome to TR Unblocked. Firstly, congratulations on winning Supplier of the Year award at the Frontier Awards last night.
Thank you.
Terrific result and well deserved. It's actually been a year since we last covered the launch of Nestle's Verse model to build food category into the number one most purchased category in travel retail. And it's worth you briefly recapping the core elements of the model.
Well, first of all, I think I'd start with the ambition. And food becoming the number one most purchased was really driven by research that we did during the pandemic. The pandemic gave us the time to step back. And we saw that in domestic market, confectionery is 7% of packaged food sales. In our world, in duty-free, it's 77% of packaged food sales. It's a huge disparity. And we had this time to stop and reflect on this. And first of all, we pat ourselves on the back as an industry, because we do confectionery extremely well, because we've been extremely focused on it within the channel. The one thing we've rather missed is the other 93% that goes on in domestic and where the opportunities exist there. So the start point was really saying, listen, if we're doing confectionery extremely well, but it's one part of what we can do in food, what happens if we also embrace the other opportunities that exist within food? So that led us to this, looking at the purchase frequencies and so on, and we know pre-crisis, beauty was 48% of baskets, food was in 30%. And it was very simple just to look at it and say, well, hang on a second, if we really start to embrace all those opportunities in the rest of the food category, shouldn't we be able to be the most purchased category? We'll never be the most valuable. I wouldn't aspire to that. But in terms of purchase occasions and cross-category purchase to drive basket spend, as well as bringing sense of place to life for airports and airport retailers, food's a fantastic opportunity to do so. So the start point was really setting this ambition to become the most purchased and go beyond beauty in terms of purchase frequency. The Verse model itself was then is the tool by which we seek to achieve this. So first of all, value and providing value. And that's where the brands kick in. Value not being just about the price. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. And it's that bundle of benefits that you derive from that particular purchase occasion. So value can come from a variety of different angles in terms of the experience that you have when you're in the store, something novelty, something new, something exciting. And this is where the broader food opportunity provides many, many, many opportunities to go beyond confectionery. And as I keep saying, and I, without shame, keep repeating, I don't want to sell one less Kit Kat bar. I don't want Jaya to have one less Toblerone or Peter anything less on Lindt. Same for my colleagues in Ferrero with Sergio, Mars, and so on.
No cannibalization.
I want them to be, every bit as successful. But we know from research that we've done that the opportunity is out there. So steps that have happened since last year. We researched a whole plethora of subcategories within food. And we've seen a range of really interesting results. Some that made me nearly fall off my chair with happiness at what I was coming back in the research, because it was identifying this scale of opportunity that's there. So, value. We've got a range of opportunities. We'll come on and talk about that. The first E is about engagement, and we all understand the digital world that's going on there, and the fast evolution of what's happening. The one thing we believe we don't want to lose sight of is the benefit of the tangible that can still exist, and our channel is quite unique in being able to continue to deliver that with a world that's going more and more online. So striking that right balance on the engagement is going to be key. The R of the Verse model is regeneration, which is what Nestle's talking about in going beyond sustainability. Everybody in the industry's talked sustainability for quite some time. Some are doing more, some are talking a really good game, but as a group, Nestle has started talking about regeneration, which is about to protect, to renew and restore the environment. And as the world's biggest food company, we're well placed to try and influence and lead that. And really proud to be part of an organisation that's focusing on this in the way that it is. We'll come on and talk some more about that. Sense of place is always going to be critical, and as I say, food can deliver on that. So that's the S of the Verse model. And the last letter, the E, is about execution. because the first four letters about value, about engagement, about regeneration, about sense of place, it's nothing if you don't execute it correctly. And working with our retail partners to make sure that the consumers have a fantastic experience in store. There you have a verse model that's really going to make the world rock.
I mean, it's a real mission, and it's still a very ambitious model in real terms. I mean, has
Yes.
the last 12 months shown you that you really had your finger on the right pulse, and that the premise of Verse corresponds exactly to travellers' new needs and wants?
Yes. I'm really happy to say yes. It's been quite exciting what's gone on in the last year. So the research that I touched on, I mentioned just before there, we identified where the propensity to purchase for across a whole range of categories. Confectionery wasn't at the top end of the scale. What we've seen is there are some categories that have a higher propensity to purchase for consumers than confectionery, and others that will be more geographically specific. But we've seen a range of opportunities, and some where we're strong and some where we're not. Two that we as Nestle are going to focus on is coffee, because coffee had a 1.5 times higher propensity to purchase than confectionery. This is the bit that nearly made me fall off my seat. And to be very clear, we're not talking about coffee to carry on the plane, the Starbucks that you might buy in the airport to carry on the plane. It's product to use in trip when you get to the far end, or a gift that when you're going to go back home. So coffee was one whole space. The other really interesting area was the area of well-being. And Nestle has invested very heavily in the Nestle Health Science division, acquiring businesses around vitamins, minerals, herbals and supplements. And this is a super exciting trend that's going on. Big growth that's happening in the big world outside. And post-COVID, the desire of people to look after their immune systems, look for solutions to help them with sleep, many different angles on protein benefits and so on. There's a range of opportunities there, which again, super exciting. Complex to execute, significant regulatory hurdles that have to be taken into account, but that's another whole area we're starting to just scratch the surface of, but super, super exciting. So I think the key thing there is we will focus on two, which are those two, coffee and the well-being, but there are other opportunities for other players. Nestle, as you know, we always take a category view of the whole thing. Biscuits we're not strong in. Particularly. So for our competitors who are doing strong things in biscuits, there's fantastic opportunities out there to go and do more. And we encourage them to do so. And I think when we start to put that together as a segment opportunity with hot drinks and do with coffee, also with tea, you can start to picture a world that has some really quite interesting retail cross-category opportunities to try and stimulate purchase. So that's been one part of the thing that started to go well. And as we've engaged with some of our retail partners,
that was my next question.
Okay.
About whether,
sorry to jump ahead.
Now, whether or not actually what you're saying, the retailers are actually buying into it.
Absolutely.
Because they have to kind of reimagine their stores to accommodate a growth in the food category.
Absolutely. Well, Nicola Wells, our head of category development, will love your use of the word reimagine, because that's exactly the phrase she uses. It's about reimagining the category, reimagining food and how we've got to deliver it. On the whole, on balance, we've had a very positive response, and the smart, well-attuned ones are already doing something with it. And that's been the great thing to see this year, the speed of response, the speed of movement. And
any names?
Dufrit as a starter, in terms of you go look at what's happening in where we've started to execute coffee in some of the European airports. First out the blocks, making it happen. In the Middle East have always been strong on food. They've had a broader understanding of the scale of opportunity. So whether you're talking Dubai or Qatar or Bahrain, Oman, many places they were already maybe further on than some of the global retailers have been, but nonetheless have embraced the thinking that we're bringing to the table, and we're really happy with what we're seeing with very early green shoots, but very positive green shoots in terms of what we've been able to execute, and that starts to build momentum, and that's a very powerful thing to have.
I mean, Verse pivots on delivering value, but it's not just about price, is it?
No, I think this is again the thought. It's about the bundle of benefits that you get. You could buy a $1,000 Armani suit and feel like you've had good value, and you could maybe buy something less significant for $10 and feel like you might have been ripped off. Because it's about the expectations and about that net set of benefits that exist. And I think that becomes that understanding of what consumers are looking for and giving them, really listening very, very carefully to what's going on and giving them what they're looking for in that space is really, really key.
Two questions really related to what you've just said. The first is that what are the products you're going to first introduce or have already introduced? The second part is talking about your well-being products. Now, we've touched on this before in terms of looking at this as a key growth sector, and again it begs the question of whether or not this can be accommodated by the retailers, or whether this is actually going to potentially cannibalize some of the existing space. And also there are other players in an airport travel retail environment that actually do sell this. So spas do where they exist, and some of the pharmacies and so on. I mean, how does that fit?
So there's multiple questions in that one question,
Yes.
which is a really good one, and I'm going to try and navigate my way around this. Let's work our way back. The airport contracts, naturally for the retailers, they need to understand where they are. At the same time, we've had some very interesting conversations this week, and I'm very happy to go and challenge airports in terms of how they're looking at this, because I see environments. You take a Heathrow, okay? You've got WH Smith selling confectionery, as do Dufry. Now, two different retailers, both selling very similar products, the same product category, and often the same products within the piece. So if it can happen in the food category, let's say, or confectionery, why can it not happen in a broader set of the categories that are there? So I think that's a discussion for the retailers to have with the airports, but if we can empower them with the understanding of the scale of the opportunities, I think the airports will wake up to the fact that everyone can win out of this particular opportunity. So that's one part. In relation to how the retailers are viewing this, we've found ourselves pushing on a completely open door, because the retailers are very good at listening to their shoppers, and their shoppers are telling them they want this. So it's been quite a very positive experience to say. I think the bigger challenge we've discovered, and the one challenge that segment carries, is regulatory. And navigating that is far more complex than, say, potentially a category like coffee. So we have to be very careful how we work our way around and the expectations we set ourselves. But the open goal that's there, I think we're all embracing it, and how quickly we can get there's the challenge.
And a reminder that we need to talk about the products that you're actually launching into the business or have already launched around this particular area.
We're working with our colleagues in Nestle Health Science, who are the experts in this area. Nestle, anyone can go look at the company results. Nestle has invested extremely heavily in this particular segment over the last almost 10 years now, starting to build up.
Think about 4 or 5 brands, haven't you?
Well, we've got 7 brands in total that the company focuses on. We're looking at 4 for the channel to start with as relevant particular needs that are in there. Starting with Solgar, which is particularly high value in terms of a premium proposition in what's on it. Nature's Bounty, another particularly strong one, which meets a different set of needs. Vital Proteins, the word itself tells you where you're going to head to with that one. And Noon, which is about hydration. Of course, those of us on long haul flights, we know that well. So there are 4 particular brands we're looking at to bring to, and we're a little bit further back on the evolutionary curve by comparison with coffee, because coffee's a well-established category within our business as well as in the marketplace. So coffee, super excited about what we're doing on this particular one, Nescafe in particular, and what we're leading with the world's leading coffee brand. The health science area is more evolutionary for consumers as well as for the retailers and for us within this particular channel. But we're putting our shoulder to the wheel and we're going to make it exciting.
Now, you mentioned that you're relaunching Perfect Store 2.0 next year.
Excited about this.
To support your case, and again,
Absolutely.
taking food beyond confectionery and adopting a category management approach to growing the food category in travel retail. Obviously, again, you're speaking to retailers right now. Are they reacting positively to what's going to be put on a plate for them next year?
I think the ball is in our court to populate that. We've said we're going to do it, so they know that something's coming. To give them something more meaningful, we need to have something that's then there. So let's have a conversation in March about that one. That one's going to be coming back end of March. We're going to get this one out the blocks. But I think the exciting thought about it is when it comes to the E of execution, we're looking in 2 dimensions in relation to how we do execution. Perfect Store, or Perfect Store 2.0, because as you know well, there was the very first one, which is the very first thought when we were back into double the category in 5, which we did. Taking the same thinking, but applying it to the world as of today. So the same principles and applying it to the world today. It will generate some different solutions, that's for sure. So excited about that, but that the team's going to be working hard on in the next 6 months so we can get that out the door and give some practical, tangible things to retailers. Say, try this, try that, and always conscious of the fact that in a global channel in which we operate, the local executions are going to be critical, and it needs to be flexible and modular for that. At the big end of the scale, in helping people understand how the whole food category could work, we're starting work with Portland on a very exciting landscape of how this could play out as a food category. Because you touch on health science, you start to get sort of an overlap with the world of beauty. The Rituals team who were presenting here this week, they talked about this in the conference. And the category adjacencies and how they can look and how they can blend become really quite interesting and start to blur potentially some of the classical boundaries that we apply in the use of the category labels. Beauty, tobacco, alcohol, food. There's going to be some crossovers as we start to move into health science. And this becomes quite exciting because the consumers don't care. They're not their labels. They know what they're looking for. It's our job to give them these exciting solutions.
Well, I certainly rate Portland very highly, and I've actually worked with them in the past, and that they do like to break new ground, and it'd be interesting to see what comes out of it. Now, another area that you've already touched on and that you're really very much focused on is sustainability. And as a business, you're adopting a very different approach to this. You've touched on it in terms of regeneration, the R as regeneration, isn't it? And that applies to some of your major global brands. Just walk us through quickly how you're managing them at the moment.
Well, I think Tamara Spader, our head of marketing, she's been sort of on the forefront of starting to talk about what's been happening, whether it was ACI back in October last year through to where we are today. We lead with KitKat in particular, and we have a very specific mission on KitKat to become carbon neutral by 2025. That's just around the corner. So as an organisation, we're pedaling really hard to make that happen. This is part of this broader direction that the company has, and a very specific goal that the company has to be carbon neutral by 2050. So to get there by 2050, and even 50% reduction by 2030. Now, you need to make steps, and KitKat becomes a lighthouse for how we're going to take this forward. Short term, we're launching KitKat Vegan, super excited about that, or we have launched, it's out there right now. But the aim to get KitKat out there first at a carbon neutral level is good. One thing we're also very proud of on this journey is we know, as Nestle as a group, we passed peak carbon in 2019. So our carbon footprint is now declining. If you pardon the use of the expression, we had quite a good crisis as a business. More people working at home, they were drinking more coffee at home, people taking more pets at home, sales were very strong. Despite the sales growth that we were getting, so the sales growth is going like this, the carbon footprint already started to come off. And we're on the right trajectory. It's led at the top by our CEO, Mark Schneider, and nobody gets a get out of jail free card on this one. And we have to make this happen. So very excited about what's happening there. Smarties, as another brand, we've already made huge strides. The first brand, confectionery brand, but as far as I'm aware, the first brand in our industry that moved to completely paper packaging, which was a big shift that we've made. And that's out there. It's not a commitment, it's live, it's now, it's there. And what we've been really appreciative of is the support from retailers who've been leveraging that to help communicate what they're doing out to their customers in stores. And one of the big announcements this week then was, of course, Quality Street moves on to paper wrapping from March next year. So we've got tangible things that we're doing, steps that we're taking, and we're measuring the progress. And proud, excited, lots to do. But we know we're doing the right thing.
Two things come to this. Firstly, there's a cost to sustainability, and the second is that quite often there's a premium attached in terms of pricing of products. What's your position on that?
So let's take those two in turn. we don't consider it a cost, we consider it an investment, because we know that consumers want sustainable solutions. Everybody's waking up to the fact that we need to do something about this. The last couple of years, COVID has kind of blurred the agenda a little bit, but now that that's passing off everyone's day-to-day living horizon, with the exception of everyone in China, of course, the planetary situation is just going to roar back up the agenda, and the necessity of doing something comes to the forefront. So we don't see it as a cost, we consider it as an investment. Does it have some cost implications? Well, you work to minimize those, and that's what we look to do. But we know that people will also consider it the right thing to do. So it's not a choice. We have to do it. We all have to do it if we're going to leave something behind for our children and their children.
Engagement and execution are the two other elements we haven't covered yet of the Verse model. I mean, what have you achieved in this particular area over the last 12 months that you can talk about?
So engagement. We've been investing, doing a lot of test and learn, invested heavily through our digitally connected shopper program that's been led by Chris Bodger, our digital manager. And we're kind of excited with some of the results. We've had some learnings where we might not have gotten as much out of it, but you have to accept it's part of the learning process, and sometimes you might stumble and you might bruise your elbow and bloody your knee. That might happen, but you take the learnings from it as you go, and all the retailers, everyone understands the necessity of providing the consumer the information they want in the way they want to consume it dictates that you've got to be present on those digital channels at the right time. The critical thing that we're working on is identifying the right moments when you can be relevant. Because you could spend a lot of time shouting about what you're doing and say, hi, I'm here, when it's completely irrelevant to them. And you'll burn your money and you'll probably upset the consumers who don't want to see it at that point. But if you can add value at the right time, then the consumer's going to appreciate it and they're going to remember it. So I think we're on a learning curve with this. Everybody in the industry is on a learning curve, and it's embracing that learning curve, because it's a very different communication method to the one that we were used to for 50 years of, as you know only too well, shooting 30-second adverts and airing it at prime time. The game's changed completely on that. So we're embracing that, and I think we will continue to. And we'll continue to invest behind it. As I said earlier, the big opportunity in our channel is not just to do that, but it's to do it in a way that blends the tangible alongside that. And this channel, as I keep talking internally, provides a fantastic shop window for us to engage with consumers in a face-to-face fashion. With so much more going online, and we all know that COVID has accelerated the online purchase of products, the real moment when you've got that captive audience, when they're far side of security, that's valuable time. And if you can make it a great experience for the consumers, then tangible plays a part of bringing that to life. So I think our industry needs to make sure that we don't all just go this mad dash to digital. It's that we blend it and strike that balance right. And we get that right, then we really will make this quite an exciting place for people to want to come and shop.
Surely. One last question, Stuart. If there are three things that you want to say to the viewing audience at this point in time, what would they be?
That's a very good question. And you've got me with that one. I think the first thing I would want to talk about is, I would ask retailers, is think about how you take a holistic view to food. And I think that demands that we look at it from confectionery as the beating heart. It will not stop being the beating heart of food in our channel. It should continue to be. So we've got to make sure we continue to do confectionery extremely well. Our top focus, as you see here, is Kit Kat and all the things we do with Kit Kat, and then After Eight, Smarties, and that's the beating heart. Retailers have also been open to local food, and whether it's maple syrup in Toronto or olive oil in Rome or dates in Dubai, whatever it happens to be, doing those local food brands well, sure. The opportunity for global food brands, as you get into the coffees or biscuits or even into the health science space, these global food brands provide some really interesting spaces that I think no one's tapped into yet, and that will help drive this purchase frequency that will make this the most purchased category. So I think the first thing is allowing encouraging retailers to think about it in terms of food, confectionery, local food, but also these global food brands. And I think that would be the primary thought that I would ask them to think about. As a second thought then, as an organisation, we're very proud about what we're doing on regeneration, and we're happy to share and happy to work with all our partners in terms of how we can help consumers understand what we're doing. We know it's critical within this industry, and I think that would be the second thing. Third thing, I'd just like to say thanks to my team, because I think they've done a super job. I think I've had three thoughts I want to share at the end.
A suitable point on which we're in the interview. Stuart Dryburgh, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Peter.